Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of Glass. The boys Connor.
Hello.
And Benny.
Hey there.
Here we go, guys. It's the final film in M. Night's trilogy, starting with Unbreakable in 2000 and Split from 2016, which we all really enjoyed. Hey, we've been talking about this film a lot, enjoyed the trailers. Let's get into the non-spoiler component of the review and start off with how everyone was feeling. Connor?
You're right, that was much better the second time.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
You want to go?
Yeah.
You want to go?
So I mentioned this in our weekly show. I'll reiterate it here. I'm coming at this film from a slightly different area than you two. So I had the opportunity to watch Unbreakable earlier this week, and I specifically chose not to because I'm coming at this from having just seen Split. So this is really not a trilogy or the capping off of a trilogy to me. This is, just a straight up follow up to Split. Having said that, I knew the beats of Unbreakable. I kind of understand the backstory. Going into this film, coming off Split is, I immediately thought that this is a hard act to follow because I was really a fan of Split when I first saw it, and I rewatched it earlier in the week and kind of reinforced how much I enjoyed that film and particularly the performances therein. The addition of Bruce Willis to that environment or that kind of setting did make me a bit nervous because Bruce Willis is not particularly known for his fine acting. And in my head, I felt that next to James McAvoy, he might feel a little bit outclassed. But the trailers didn't really kind of reinforce that for me, so I kind of put it to the side a little bit. Based on the trailers, I was pretty excited to see this film. I thought that it had some interesting kind of plot developments within it. I liked the idea of them being in a hospital and the question of whether their abilities are very real and how they were going to explain that away. So yeah, I was pretty excited to see this film. I thought that there's a good chance that it could be good. I also knew that it's M. Night Shyamalan, so there was every chance that he was just going to muck this up with something convoluted and contrived.
Benny, how are you feeling, man?
I'm on record as being a big fan of Unbreakable. I don't think I saw it when it originally came out, but not too long after. And Split as well, I enjoyed a lot. I was the only person in the cinema that I was in when I saw it who actually knew what was happening with
at the end,
the credits scene. Yeah, when Bruce Willis shows up, and I was kind of blown away. That was like Shyamalan's biggest and most effective twist for me. And yeah, coming up to this, it's so hard to think retrospectively how you thought about a movie before you saw it after you've seen it, because now having seen it, I'm just not sure. But yeah, if any, I was definitely undeniably very excited to see what he did with such an unconventional setup for a trilogy, for ostensibly what should be like a 3-act story, just told in such a strange way. It's the trilogy that should never have been, but magically was through Shyamalan's own funding and passion.
Which is a fascinating component of this filmmaking process. This trilogy,
which we can get into.
Yep.
But I'm if anything, I'm a Shyamalan apologist. I've seen everything he's done except for After Earth, and I think there's stuff to like in all of them. Some of them are great, some of them are garbage. But he's always got interesting ideas, and he's an individual,
and he's undeniably good at his craft in terms of filmmaking, or in terms of like shooting a film. I won't say filmmaking because I think that's more than just the cinematography. But he's undeniably a cinematographer. Or you know what I'm trying to say. Brain just went flying.
He points cameras at things.
Points cameras at the thing to shoot stuff.
George?
Yeah, I managed to put both of the films on before watching this, which I thought was a very good option. It was nice to have a refresher. It was really nice to revisit Unbreakable. It's been quite a number of years, and I thoroughly enjoy that film. Probably more than most. I really, really love that film. And Split I had a great time with as well. as a nice little tight thriller. And it was really, really exciting to hear that James McAvoy was coming back to this. I was excited to see these three characters in this psychiatric ward interacting. It was tantalizing. M. Night, I really don't hate the guy. A lot of people really don't like him, and I'm always there willing I'm always rooting for him. I always want him to do well.
Totally.
So I was very excited for this. And I guess let's get into maybe some of the broader brushstrokes or some of the major things that stuck out. I guess a lot of people, a full disclaimer here, I've watched a lot of reviews because I've wanted to see what everyone's been saying, because there's been a lot of different opinions on this.
I'll kind of contrast that and say I've looked at nothing. Like I've not looked at any reviews, any Rotten Tomatoes scores, any kind of...
I don't like to... I never... If we're going to do a review, I won't watch anyone's review. But for this one, I came out of it and I was disappointed in a lot of ways. But I wanted to uncover what everyone else was thinking. But the main...
Georgie, sorry, I think you may have compromised the integrity of this podcast, and you should leave.
Yeah,
you're laughing? I'm not kidding.
Ben,
I'm sorry, bro.
I just want to check. Did we not get a talking to before the podcast about not giving away our thought? Okay, no, I just wanted to check. That's all good.
But the main thing that stuck out to me about this film is the second act. It really
the hour and a half
gets
second act
so labored, and the beginning part is really fantastic. Like I love that sequencing, and it moves at a brisk pace, but that to me just really stuck out, that second act.
Yeah, this movie is probably not what anyone was expecting, in that, you know, it jumps off a few weeks after the events of Split. David Dunn, Bruce Willis, is kind of on the hunt for the Horde, or the Beast, who is up to his old girl kidnapping ways. And just right at the beginning of the movie, essentially, they both get arrested and put into a facility that's also housing Sam Jackson. And the bulk of the movie is like a group therapy session between those three characters. And it's... Yeah, was this at all where you expected this movie to go necessarily? Like, especially more from a point of view of watching Unbreakable and knowing he wanted to turn that into a trilogy initially, and then watching Split. Like, obviously the trailers kind of gave up the goat here, but yeah. Yeah,
we can get into a lot of specifics in the spoiler section of this review later on, but this took a lot of different directions that I did not expect, and not all of it I hated. You know, there's a lot of stuff that I really enjoy in this, and we can get into it as the podcast goes on. But there was just that middle act really stuck out like a sore thumb for me. And
so are you referring to kind of when they're in the hospital? Mm-hmm. So I think that and
there's a particular theme coming through that does not work. Yeah. And it doesn't work for a very specific reason.
So I think that kind of oddly enough, it has very similar pacing to Split. But I think...
What? I completely disagree.
Well, I'm about to explain where the difference is. But I think that the way that Split is put together and the content matter of it makes it feel a little bit more succinct and a little bit more driven. Because I feel like M. Night Shyamalan is a relatively slow filmmaker. He really focuses on getting neat, tight, and meticulous shots. He'll take his time, particularly with the character of that James McAvoy plays. I mean, that requires a bit of long screen time to show accurately. So I felt like that there was that kind of longevity within Split, and I feel like that transferred over here. I think that there was a less coherent storyline in this one. Or at least one that was a little bit harder to follow and was a little bit more contrived. And that's probably one of the things that stuck out to me about this film, is that there are good chunks of this film that are relatively contrived. And that kind of, to me, stuck out like a sore thumb. Now, having said that, I think that there is relatively good justification in the film as to why that is. I mean, much like... from what I've heard about Unbreakable, this is very much about comic books and superheroes, and Split certainly touches in on that and really kind of follows that through on the end. But I feel like they hide these moments of kind of what is it contrivity? It's not a word.
Contrivance.
Contrivance, yeah. These moments of contrivance with that excuse of comic books are contrived. I mean, you can't look too far into the plots of comic books, and therefore it's okay to do in this film because it mirrors comic books a lot.
I know, George. Sam Jackson practically comes out at points and says, "This movie is shit, but comic books are shit."
Yeah, I mean, like that was a moment where I was like, "Is that enough of an excuse to really like get this past?"
But I can give him a pass for that because at least I think whilst it was hammy, M. Night's pretty hammy. He kind of slaps you over the head with the theme, but he made it work enough that he subverted some things that made certain things interesting, particularly with the ending. We can get into that more in spoilers, but it was more like I didn't mind some of those things.
It let me questioning it. I wasn't sure whether I hated it. I wasn't sure whether I liked it. I kind of felt like, ooh, I'll give this a pass, I suppose, but it's not right. It's not like a one of those passes where like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, I'd rather enjoy this film than not, so I'm going to pass on that. Like, I'm not going to make too big of a deal out of it.
Yeah, there's no shortage of just super on the nose Shyamalan dialogue that's just explaining the thesis of the film in the film.
Yes.
It's really
Do you get it? I put a lot of thought into this film, and I'm going to force feed it down your throat.
Been thinking about it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So this movie is a rare, possibly only example of a film that is a sequel to two separate films. It's really not the third film in a series. It's a sequel to two different films. How do you guys feel it stacks up in that regard? Because I think it's really noticeable. I think the film is split in its own way between two films. It's like serving two masters in a lot of ways.
So
yeah, how did you? And also, you didn't see Unbreakable. How did
I didn't see Unbreakable,
this?
but I knew the beats of Unbreakable, and I knew the general plot.
Because I was watching this film, and I thought to myself, like, how is Connor going to watch this movie and get like any impact from the points where I thought were the most successful parts of the film?
I ended up really enjoying it because I think that aspect of it, because I think they did enough, and this kind of was bizarre to me because I don't really hold Shyamalan as someone that is really great at dialogue or scripting in that sense. But I thought that the exposition as to who everyone was and why they were there and what they do was really excellent in terms of like getting you up to speed. I don't think you need to have seen Unbreakable to get the main beats of Unbreakable and to really derive some enjoyment out of this film.
Unbreakable is incredibly simple. It's entirely a mood piece, I feel.
So it's about spending time with that character.
No,
and that character is so quiet. He has like probably 10 lines in this movie, and
who?
David
Dunn.
Yeah, totally. No, so I'm saying Unbreakable is fantastic and essential viewing if you want to watch this movie. Both films are. But you can totally watch this movie and understand just the plot beats from that film because there's not much to it.
But then the emotional element of the film does not
100%,
resonate. And that's
100%.
where I thought the film was at its best, was when I was seeing the David Dunn character and when those moments were working.
I'll go a step further and say that I think that I mean, it might not have been as impactful, but I think you get quite an insight to who that character is and the motivations. And I mean, like, it doesn't take long to kind of get the feeling for who David Dunn is.
I'm just going to have to disagree here because I think this is a terrible follow-up to Unbreakable. I think it's a really bad sequel to Unbreakable. I think it works better as a sequel to Split.
Well, I mean, if anything needs to go on, it probably is. You'd have to find someone that hasn't seen Split and has only seen Unbreakable.
No, I disagree because I think there's some really cool ways they actually wrap everything together. And I didn't hate it. I quite liked some of those moments. But I think that you are completely right when you say it's serving two masters. And this film is trying to have the really sort of dour or like introspective feeling that Unbreakable has with the like much more popcorny thriller of Split. And it's this really strange combination that it sort of starts and goes in this. It's like it doesn't get its footing going, and it really, towards the end, I was like, I wasn't actually saying to myself, I want this to wrap up. I said, I want this to really wrap up incredibly well, so that I go, oh, I get why he did all that, and that didn't happen.
Yeah, it was a real slap in the face realization for me that those two films are so tonally and stylistically different that without, you take away that initial shock of like, oh my God, these films are in the same series. That's so cool. They just don't really work together, I don't think.
And it goes back to what you said earlier, and it's something that I really, really respect about M. Night in that he put a lot on the line to make The Village. I think he remortgaged his property in Pennsylvania.
The Visit.
The Visit, sorry, yeah. And he self-funded Split, and he chucked that tag on to try and get enough buzz so that he can make Glass. As a marketing and a branding and like building a career, I respect it so much. Like I'm so into it.
He funded this as well.
Yeah,
I think.
he funded this as well.
$9 million for Split. It was around 20
for this.
Yeah,
I am so into that. However, it's the problem is that ultimately it's not actually a very good trilogy. In the fact that they are so different that when it comes together, it doesn't quite fit together. I keep going back to the fact that I liked heaps of stuff in this film. I really did.
Me too.
But ultimately, I left the film and I went, wow, I am really disappointed with Glass.
I don't think...
So, I mean, you've kind of... Well, yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
I don't think I had enough faith in this film to be that disappointed, unfortunately. But I think I'm pretty much going to be exactly on board with you for most of this.
So I think one of the best things I could have done is not watch Unbreakable because I found it.
I think you're missing out on a really good film.
I think the best thing you could have done is not watch this and watch Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Well, no, because I think I got a lot more out of this film apparently, because I didn't leave the film bitterly disappointed.
No, I'm saying never watch this and watch Unbreakable.
Yeah.
He's got to do a review.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so let's maybe talk about some of the positives.
Yeah, well, let's segue into positives with maybe the strongest element of the film. Let's talk about the performances quickly because I'm sure. Let's start with McAvoy. I'm sure we can all agree
he's killer.
He was bringing his A game like he was in Split.
Well, I mean, and I'd say even better than Split because he does some things that are just kind of in terms of craft, pretty astounding. Just going through one take and as a kind of a regular occurrence in this film, going through like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different characters in that one take. It
was a lot less effective for me than it was in Split. Because Split, for all the talk it gets about, James McAvoy plays 24 characters. He only plays like 3 on screen.
Yep.
For 99% of the film. There's maybe 1 or 2 others. And he fucking kills that. In this movie, it was a little more over the top, a little more.
He had about 12 in this.
A little more caricature.
There were some moments that were hilarious though. There was that one character who was like a film critic or something. I got a real good chuckle out of that.
Buff.
Yeah, it was so funny. But I completely agree. Those are the moments in this film where you're like, wow, I'm seeing a guy really perform his ass off right now, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying myself.
I'll also give I'll give shouts out to Jackson as well. And I
think Jackson was great.
I don't think it really hit home how good that performance was until I saw rewatch the trailer for Homecoming. Oh, sorry, not Homecoming.
Far From Home.
Where he plays Nick Fury, and I just like the stark contrast, and you kind of realize that this guy's got some serious acting chops in terms of. I mean, he kind of gets typecast into one particular type of character,
badass motherfucker
that yells out profanities and that, and like I mean, he's in this. I think it kind of shows that he has some pretty serious range.
Yeah, the movie's called Glass, and I think he earns that title by just being a fucking really cool omnipresent presence throughout the movie, even though he doesn't speak a word for the first 45 minutes or so.
Yeah, and a lot of people complaining the fact that he's not getting as much screen time, or it's maybe, but I think ultimately it is his movie through the plot.
I think he's got a very understated performance for that first 40 minutes. Like he's in it, he doesn't say much, he doesn't do much, but I think that you kind of get this sense that he's in there, that he's putting on a performance, or the character's putting on a performance. So
yeah, you're waiting for something to happen. Totally.
Yeah, it's very kind of like ooh.
Yeah. Crushingly disappointed with David Dunn and Bruce Willis.
100%. This is my one of the biggest complaints with the film. He has a bad reputation for just not giving a fuck about anything as far as movie making goes nowadays, and this movie is the biggest reminder I've gotten of that in a long time. Maybe more so than Die Hard 6 or whatever it was, because having watched Unbreakable recently, he gives such an amazing, sensitive, understated performance
Yeah.
in that film, which is coming out of one of Hollywood's biggest action guys. Is so beautiful.
Completely agree.
Yeah, the whole thrust of that film, and in this he was just there.
Yeah, I didn't feel like David Dunn was given enough in this film to actually explore that character
As well, yeah.
It's much more skewed towards the other two. And I think that is really disappointing. And combined with that, there's very little dialogue. I said about 10 lines. He's sort of moping around most of the film. And in Unbreakable, when he's moping around, it works because you're following this character. But in this one, they didn't give him enough to do. And it made the whole exercise of the trilogy feel very redundant from that character's perspective.
And especially,
difficult.
sorry, just quickly, and especially because for plot reasons as well, the fact that he's just moping around, it makes you want to yell at the screen like, David Dunn,
Yeah.
what are you doing just moping around?
Yeah.
You could end this interminably long middle act in a second.
We'll get into that.
I felt like, the understated nature of the character worked for someone that hasn't seen Unbreakable. I mean, he came off as this kind of not present, but just calm. And I don't know whether that kind of works into how he was in Unbreakable, but it just seems he's more at peace or calm than just not present. At least that's the sense that I got. And I think he was a good kind of reflection against James McAvoy, who was so kind of sporadic and just so out there and so chaotic in his performance that I felt that it was Glass and Dunn, who are these kind of calm at peace veterans, battling against or battling with this kind of manic beast or horde or Kevin or whatever you call it. So that's the sense that I got, and so it didn't really come across as a disappointment because I wasn't really expecting anything from him, but it felt like a very kind of reassuring, steady performance throughout the film. And to be honest, I don't know that they could have really done much else with him with the time that is given. I mean, maybe they could have, maybe they couldn't have.
I think there's a lot of this film that they made some very poor decision making in the script. And I will say you are 100% correct in that you did need to have a counter to James McAvoy, because if they're both, crazy, then, it becomes too much. However, that's not the David Dunn character. And in this one, he's just really just dull. Really dull.
That's
David
my point.
Dull.
I didn't see dull. I saw calm.
Okay.
We also have Spencer Treat Clark returning 20 years later as David Dunn's son, which I think is really cool and makes for some effective scenes in the film that we can talk about later. I did not like him in this movie, though, unfortunately.
He's not a very expressive actor.
I got really excited that he was coming back because he is one of the few child actors who has actually maintained an acting career throughout his life. And this is more of a writing thing, 100% a writing thing. I thought his character came off as so dumb. Like, he seemed like more childish.
There was a weird scene that kind of didn't feel at place in there with that character.
Well, he seemed more childish than he was in Unbreakable.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was really kind of shook me. I'm like, man, this guy's been in a state of arrested development ever since he found out his father's a superhero. And that could have worked for plot reasons if the movie went a different direction, definitely. But the way it all happens was just like, man, this character did not work at all.
Yeah, I found that character and Anya Taylor-Joy's character as well, I did not really like the way they were integrated into the story. I liked him at the beginning.
I almost liked it.
I liked him at the beginning when they were teamed up. That's in the trailers. I really liked that. But when it got into the facility and all that, it got very thinly.
That'll be a very interesting thing to talk about. Spoilers. Speaking of, do we have any other kind of general comments about it? Because I feel like there's so much to dissect with getting into spoilers.
As
that I feel
with
like
Split and Unbreakable, there's some great shots in this movie.
Oh, beautiful.
cinematography is on point.
Some great stuff.
Amazing. I think it's the first scene James McAvoy comes in where he's just spinning around. He's on the roller skates. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, there's like one cool shot in like the rear view mirror of a car. It's cool. Conversely, the movie's budget shows really hard in a lot of places, I feel. There's a confrontation right at the beginning of the film that I thought was just like pretty laughable. I mean, and this is no spoiler, David Dunn's superhero outfit, which they've carried on from Unbreakable, it worked in the one scene in Unbreakable that he needed it. The idea that for 20 years he's been wearing a raincoat as like his Superman costume, I think is just like when you see it in daylight, I'm like, man, is that meant to be the superhero that this world deserves? Man, I'm not into it.
It didn't really bother me.
I don't think the Beast either looks fucking particularly imposing in daylight. His dog run from the trailer. I don't know if that's meant to be intimidating or impressive or hilarious.
I liked it.
I like it. It's so over
Very
the top.
animalistic.
I don't know. It's very strange. It's the movie is nowhere near the scale I think people would have expected or wanted, but it's probably for the best because it cannot achieve that scale.
All right. Well, let's move into spoilers.
I think we should give a final recommendation to wrap up before we move into spoilers.
Do you want to go first then?
I've said I'm very disappointed with Glass. I think I will watch it again. I will revisit all three of these films many times over the years, I'm sure, but it doesn't come together. This experiment, which I really salute from an entrepreneurial standpoint, in terms of a creative endeavor, it has not paid off. Ben?
I'm really torn because when I saw this movie a week before release, and a lot of people were asking me if they should watch it, if they should bother. And my only kind of criteria with that was if you've seen the other two, definitely go see it. Because I enjoyed a lot of this movie. But I don't know, the more I've sat with it, the more I'm just like, man, I feel like I'd probably just enjoy those other two movies more without this, despite the high points of this film. So yeah, I'm really sorry, guys. Flip a coin if you're unsure, because I don't know which is better. I think if I ever watch Split again, I think I'd rather just completely excise the David Dunn scene from the end, because I think it's stronger without it now. Because all you're going to just be reminded of is not the good stuff from this film, but the bad stuff. So if you never want to watch those other two again, watch this.
Can I just quickly piggyback on what you're saying? And I would recommend seeing this. I think there's enough good stuff in here, but from where I come from and the films that I've seen over the years, that's where my disappointment comes from.
Okay. As a follow-up to Split, I think it's worth checking out. I wasn't bitterly disappointed by this film. I wasn't blown away by this film. There's some pretty entertaining shit in here. There's some other stuff that's pretty highly contrived and kind of you'll have to actively suspend belief. But all in all, I think it's a really interesting film at the very least, and which is beautifully shot. I mean, I struggle when I had a friend ask me whether it was good today or whether it was worth watching, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't give you an honest, straight answer as to whether it's a good film or whether it's a worthwhile film seeing. I mean, if you've got a spare 2 hours and you're, willing to be entertained, then I think why not? There's nothing about this movie that I really thought was egregious or terrible or bad or anything like that. I don't.
Yeah, I would just quickly say, if you are going to watch it, more power to you. I would watch it on Netflix because I think some of the stuff in this movie is kind of laughably bad, and I would feel a little bit embarrassed to be in a crowded cinema watching it. That's just me. I'm very self-conscious in big crowds.
Oh, that's weird.